I certainly will tell players if they're trying to do something that's impossible, right? You can't, even with a natural 20, even with a plus 35, you can't jump to the moon. When it comes to combat, do you like to run things fast and tight or let players discuss among themselves? This is a bit of a sliding scale. I It's hard to say like this is the rule all the time. I think you really have to kind of read your players and try to get a sense of where they are. So, like early on in a campaign, I'm going to be pretty accommodating. I'm going to try to be as helpful as I can. And when I say helpful, like obviously we always try to like help them figure out, if they have questions. I'm talking about, if it's early on in a campaign, it's like, hey, that spell, just so you know, like, do you want to be hitting the rest of your party, Mr. Wizard, with that spell that you're casting? I'll call that kind of stuff out early on in a campaign. While it's late in the campaign, I'll be like, no, I'll leave them to their own devices, and they've been playing, they know that kind of stuff. I would probably have a shorter, a sh- like at the same time, I don't want people to get into bad habits, right? So I don't think it's good for the game and good for players and good for combat for every person's turn to become like a debate about what they should do with their turn around the table. I'll usually start out by kind of like gently reminding people, like, hey, this is like 6 seconds. You should basically be reacting quickly, right? Rather than sort of planning and plotting. I mean, if to the extent that there's time to plan and plot and do something really complicated, yeah, if you're thinking about that while everybody else is doing their turn, sure. Otherwise, I mean, it's already going to be tricky with people being on the ball. If you have a full table and everybody takes 5 minutes to debate what to do, it's like that's going to be a lengthy combat. So, yeah, for something like that, I would probably encourage people probably not to do that so much because again, that's I feel like that's a bad habit that they can get into. But like I say, it's gonna depend on the group. It's gonna depend if it's brand new players versus experienced players, and where we are in the campaign. I'm gonna try to adjust that kind of adjust based on all of that. Sure. In terms of how you want your players to describe their action, plus how you resolve that action and narrate, is there a specific formula? Would you want your player to use flower or descriptive language to describe a basic attack with a dagger? Uh, would you take that action choice to describe it in your own words in the narrative? So, yeah, no, I think you are. I think that if a player takes it upon themselves, if they choose to describe with, you know, narratively, descriptively, um, what they're trying to do, especially if they're willing to do it even when they fail. I don't know if you noticed, but some of the best, like everybody's favorite actual plays out there, like Critical Role, it's like they're narrating their own failures, which is top level play. Um, I think that if a player is going to do that, I'm going to basically let what they say stand, assuming it's accurate, obviously. I wouldn't go about repeating it. And then if they don't, if they just choose to kind of stick to the mechanics of it, then sometimes I'm going to throw in the flare. I'll be honest, I don't always do it. Sometimes I just let the move be the move, um, because I want the really exciting stuff to be exciting. So in some cases, it's like, okay, I'm going to shoot a couple of arrows over. And it's like, oh, yeah, they connect. They do this damage, like we resolve it. Versus that same rogue doing their sneak attack. It's like, okay, the brutality of that might get more description than just like a couple of arrows. Um, especially that's also really just sort of like a gut thing, like as it's going around the table, like how's the pacing? Are people enjoying the detail, or is it better to just move it along to the next person? Like picking your moment for that kind of stuff, I think is important because not everything, I don't think everything demands the narrative. I mean, it's one thing. Um, no, Gibson, we do attack rolls. So, like, when I say like describing in both cases, so if I'm a player and I'm a wizard, I'm going to describe how I cast it, right? Like I know that this for this catapult spell, well, I can pick up any little pebble and I hold it between my hands and it starts spinning, 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 and then it shoots off. I'm going to describe that. Well, I don't know if it hit yet, and then we do the thing, and then we find out whether it hit or not. So as a player, you can still describe, I think, what you're trying and attempting to do. It's obviously not going to work in all cases, but I think generally that's still fine. I'll just say, in my experience, most players do not want to narrate in either case. I think they want to describe what they're trying to do. I think it's really super rare that, except in like very specific situations, um, and unless you give them, unless you open the door and say, okay, great, how do you want to do this, right? Or just if you actually call out and say, hey, describe how you do that, I think players are willing to try, but I don't think it's their instinct to do it. What's your approach to adversary AC/DC check? Do you hide all the numbers and just say whether the attack hits, or would you tell your players, hey, you can do this, but it's going to be very difficult, and it's a DC of 20? It depends. I realize that's my answer to most of your questions, but that's kind of how I think about it. I certainly will tell players if they're trying to do something that's impossible, right? You can't, even with a natural 20, even with a plus 35, you can't jump to the moon. And I'll just tell them that, right? Obviously, that's an extreme example, but it's important to say no matter what you do with your dice, you can't jump to the moon or whatever equivalent. In other cases, if there's a level of difficulty, if I think it's going to be dramatic for everybody to know, then I'll say it. If I don't think it's going to be very dramatic, if it's just going to determine something, or if I just kind of have a scribbled down like this is the number, I might not call it out. So I would say that my default is probably not to call out those numbers, because when I do call the numbers out, I want that to stand out. I want that to be a moment. I don't make it a rule that I'm always calling out what the numbers are going to be or what the numbers need to be. Except, I mean, in like combat situations, stuff like that, once an armor class is hit, I'll usually call that out. It's like, hey, that's exactly the number you need. Once people have seen through experience like how hard it is to hit an enemy, then I'll tell them. But I don't like telling them the number ahead of time. I think that could be a lot more fun to discover through the course of combat, for instance. So I apply that same rule to all types of difficulty numbers. Deploy it when it's most dramatically interesting.